Hello and welcome to this very special edition of the Total Saints podcast. We're the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. Our podcast is entirely supported by our loyal Patreon community. Without you, we couldn't make the show each week. We'll have more information on how you can become a patron a little bit later. My name is Martin Stark, and I'm joined by a man who made over 400 appearances for Southampton, played 40 times for his country, and scored a couple of goals too. Former centre-back and Saints legend Claus Lundekvam is our guest. Claus, thank you so much for joining us. How's Norway? Cold, I guess?
Yes, you're right. It's cold and wet. Typical Bergen West Coast weather in Norway. Yeah. But very nice to join you on this podcast and always link up with the club and link up with the Saints fans because that's what would we be without the supporters?
Well, absolutely. We've got loads to talk about. We've got your new business venture, which people may have seen on social media. So we're going to chat a little bit about that later. As soon as we mentioned you were coming on, we were absolutely inundated with people getting in touch saying Claus is a legend and these are some questions that we'd like. So there's loads of questions to get through. I just wonder for anybody who's watching and listening who might not be as familiar with your time at the club as perhaps people of my age are, can you just share a little bit about how your time with Southampton came about?
I grew up as a Liverpool supporter, as a Liverpool fan, because my grandmother was born and raised in Liverpool, and she met my granddad during the war. So Liverpool was naturally my side. So it was quite special that the club legend Graham Souness was the one who brought me to Southampton. And this was all the way back in 96, September, I think it was. And obviously unbelievable to, it's like a childhood dream. Obviously, growing up in Norway and Scandinavia, watching the English football is massive. So when I was there, I had 2 days training and straight into a debut against Nottingham Forest. So I had to learn quick, but it was a great move.
When you made your debut, who was in that team? Who kind of like took you under their wing? Who put their arm around you and said, this is going to be okay. You'll be all right.
I think all of them. I think one of the strengths that I've learned being at the club for over 12, 13 years is the sort of family oriented approach to looking after each other. And I think that was one of the first things that I really took in and felt that everyone was there for me as a new player, even though I was a rival for some players. I remember just really humble, down to earth teammates that was trying to make me a better player. And I had to learn quick because what Premier League showed me, especially in the first few games, was a bit of a culture shock coming from Norway. Everything went so much faster, and the ability, obviously, and the physical side of it was, I had to learn fast to be able to handle this league.
Did you ever doubt yourself in those early games, those early weeks? Because you went on to make over 400 appearances in the end. So you obviously, you took to it and you've got a great career. But back at the start, was there ever were you thinking maybe I'm not going to be able to do this, or was it about your self-belief and your ability?
Well, I had a very, very sort of a strong belief in myself and my ability, but I have to admit, 10, 15 minutes into that game against Forest, I did feel how the hell am I gonna handle this? When the game was so much faster and the physical side of it was just immense. So I did, not questioned myself, but I said to myself, I need to learn quick, and I need to do things a lot quicker than I used to. So it was a steep learning curve from day one, but I could never have sort of imagined that I was their club captain sort of 12 years later.
It's mad the amount of appearances. I think over 290 of those in the Premier League. You went on to obviously captain the club as well. Joe says, what's your absolute favourite memory wearing the famous red and white? Is there one game that stands out for you or one moment? Maybe it was wearing the yellow.
Yeah, actually, the FA Cup final, wearing the yellow shirt at Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. Uh, that was special. I grew up with the FA Cup and the history of the oldest domestic cup, and that was an unbelievable day for the fans, for the club, for everyone involved to reach the final against Arsenal that day. It's right up there with the best moments, or the sort of big moments in my career when it comes to games.
I just remember walking through the streets of Cardiff and there being yellow everywhere. Everybody was singing. Everybody was in such a good mood. And it was a really great atmosphere inside the stadium too. As a player, do you feel the same, or is it a mixture of nerves going into a big match like that?
Oh, it's a bit of both. I remember the semi-final actually really well as well at Villa Park against Watford. When everyone was sort of dressed out and that to come and reach the final in that game was also a very, very special game and an occasion for everyone involved. But the FA Cup final is something that I always gonna remember, and I do remember half of the stadium being yellow, and they stayed behind for like an hour. I just remember the appreciation of the fans, even though we lost the game. It was one of those, as a professional football player, you dream of being involved in a game like that against mighty Arsenal. I have to say, at the time, I think that was the 2003 season when they were unbeaten. So we were up against a good side, but it was something. One of the games that I'll never ever forget, and amongst other big games, obviously for Southampton, we had a few great escapes, especially the first few years I was there. I remember really well the 6-3 games against Man United at the Dell is one of them. So it's many to pick from, actually.
We also need to talk about Wolves away. And Dan says, was there ever a period playing for Southampton that you felt like you were never going to score a Premier League goal for the club? Did you ever feel you had the Benali curse? And what was that feeling like after scoring the goal?
Obviously, I was taking a lot of stick from it, but it didn't really bother me in the way maybe it should have, because I was a big, strong centre half, and I should have scored more goals. For me, I think it was a mental block that I switched off, going in the opposite sort of 16-yard box. I was defending my own box with my life, but it was a mental thing that. So to score that first goal at Molineux, especially against Dave Jones and Paul Jones, was I think I was in shock. And I remember the supporters were in the far end of the stadium from the goal I scored. So I remember I had to run 60 yards over to celebrate with them. But that was a special moment.
What was going through your mind as I think it was Fabrice Fernandez who was lining up that free kick? Are you just in the box going, I'm not going to get anywhere near this? Or do you go into the box thinking, I'm going to get on the end of it? This is it. It's going to happen now.
Well, I saw this sort of Fabrice Fernandez free kick. I think I had a flick on from Calvin Davis or Calvin Phillips actually, and I read that pretty well and sort of sneaked in behind my marker and sort of slid the ball like a tackle in the back of the net. So it was just reading the sort of the cross and acting sort of like you normally would do. It was it was very special, and like I said, I think I was a little bit in shock for the first few seconds. What happens?
But you scored a couple of goals for your country as well, didn't you? Was that 2 in 40 appearances? So you were more prolific for country rather than club.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually scored goal number 1,000 for Norway at home against Bosnia. So that was one for the history book. And it's been a lot of talk around that goal because I scored it with a special part of the body, sort of lower part of my abdominal. So but I didn't know that record was up for grabs. So and I think everyone was as surprised as I was to score that goal. But it's always going to be there in the history book. But it's quite funny because when I grew up and when I went to Brandbergen and in my sort of developing years, I was always an offensive player. I was an offensive midfielder. I could play as a striker. I was sort of versatile of where I could play and had sort of abilities that wide. One of the nicknames I got pretty quickly was Silky. And I think one of the reasons that Graham Souness bought me was obviously having ability on the ball and sort of creating something going forward.
I was just going to ask about, we'll get on to the modern day in just a moment, but Nick Clifton said, who did you really not look forward to playing against for whatever reason? When you think back, was there an individual, when you saw them on the team sheet or in the tunnel, you just thought, oh no, here we go again?
Yeah, not many. I sort of, I loved going up against the best strikers in the world every week. I sort of emphasize that. I really love that challenge of playing against top international strikers every week, even though you got a lot of respect for their ability and what they can do. But obviously, I've been asked this question, hundreds of times, and there's one player that I sort of never ever got really any good control of that, and that was Thierry Henry. I think he was the player that, especially around those years, around the cup final and from 2000 to maybe 2005-06. He was on his day, I would say, unplayable because he had so much speed. He was incredibly quick. I'd love to play against big, strong strikers because I was pretty quick myself. But to play against a player like him that had that ability and being clever with pace, that was a nightmare. So, and I actually should have been sent off after 30 seconds in that FA Cup final. And he reminded me every time we played against each other after that of that incident. I changed shirts with him the game after, and he said, "Yeah, I was very lucky. If he went down there, the referee must have sent me off." So yeah, I was water skiing after his shirt there for a while.
There aren't many defenders that can say they got the better or had a good game against Thierry Henry, to be fair. Richard Cookson says, who was the best manager that you played under and why? There were a few.
Yeah, there were a few. I think I was under 9 or 10 managers while I was there. I think I learned I learned something from all of them, and the approach of how to get the best out of a squad of players, how to treat a dressing room, how to sort of approach a group of performing players, and in like I said, in a good and maybe in a not such a good way, I learned something from all of them. I think the best sort of years I had as a footballer, I think from 2001 to 2005 was probably my peak years. And I have to mention Gordon Strachan, obviously taking us to the FA Cup final and having two top 10 finishers was and Gordon. I love Gordon because we hated him when he came. We hated him with a passion because he ran us like every day, and every Monday, every Tuesday, he never changed the program, regardless of how often we played, but we became an extremely well gelled and sort of really fit team. And I think those 2 years Gordon was there, we hardly made any changes to the 11. We had sort of 13, 14 players that was really, really strong in their position. So Gordon was probably the one I would pick as my manager for all the years I was there. But I learned so much from many of them, and Glenn Hoddle on the tactical side was fantastic. Harry Redknapp was. I loved Harry. He had his own way to treat a football club and players. But I just feel privileged and lucky to have learned so much from so many different managers.
I want to talk about some of the guys that you played with as well. Moncal's Pancakes says, who was your favourite centre-back partner? Again, there would have been a few over the years, weren't there? Obviously, Killer stands out for most of us. Was there one that you enjoyed playing alongside?
I enjoyed playing alongside, I think, every one of them. But I think the connection me and Michael Svensson had suited the team, suited the way of play we had really well. We complemented each other really, really well. He was the big sort of strong. He was he was fearless and really, really hard and tough to play against. And for me to sort of sweep around him and read the game around him, I think that was a really good partnership for about 2.5 years. Very unlucky for Michael. He had quite a few injuries, but I will have to mention Dean Richards as well. Was an unbelievable partner to have. Rest in peace. And Dina was such a clever centre half, way ahead of the era we played in. Ken Moncau was there when I came. I had quite a few games with him, and it also suited me pretty well because I was the sort of playing centre half. I read the game well and sort of like to have a big, strong partner next to me. So, but yeah, I think I formed pretty good partnerships with quite a few at my time. But choosing one, it's gonna be the butcher killer Michael.
I think a lot of people will agree with that too. So we had the highs of the FA Cup final, and then, of course, after Gordon Strachan went, there was the relegation that followed. I just want to just touch on that a bit. Drew says, following the relegation, did you ever consider moving on from the club? And were there players in the team who wanted to leave but didn't? And what sort of impact does that have on the team environment? It's kind of pertinent to what the club are going through at the moment too.
Yeah, I think the relegation season is your worst nightmare as a footballer, because your ego, you got so much pride in you, and I was a senior. I think I was captain for most of that season. But we formed. Unfortunately, we formed a sort of a disconnected dressing room that season. We had small cliques of players that were looking after themselves and not looking after the team. And I remember I found it incredibly hard because as a player going out there, you wanna do your best. You want to play as good as you can for yourself. But if you don't have players around you, you can rely on and sort of trust and be there for you. And this is as much as psychologically as it is football wise. We had too many players in that squad that wasn't team players, to put it that way. And to get relegated and to be a senior player and to love the club as much as I do and I did at the time, and it's extremely painful, to put it that way. So, but we got relegated long before the last game home against Man U. Even though we had a chance towards the last few games, we had this connection in the dressing room that it's never gonna be good for performing.
And that season, the following season after the relegation, I think, was that the one where the injuries started to creep in for yourself? That must have been quite a frustrating time because a player like you is just going to want to get out on the pitch and make it good and get the club back up again. And if you suddenly find that the injuries are creeping in, it must be a really difficult time for you.
Yeah, obviously it was very difficult to sort of turn around and accept that we got relegated. For one, that was tough enough to concentrate. Now we were in the championship and probably to perform in the championship, I would say it's one of the toughest leagues in the world without a doubt. So that was very, very hard. But like you said, yes, I got a really bad ankle injury during that first season in the championship, which ended my career. End of the day, even though I managed to sort of nearly come back. I will never forget that moment when the tendon in my ankle snapped again, and I knew my career was over. But yeah, obviously, when you get hit by bad injuries, and for me, it was so painful because to not be involved, to not be able to help the team. I hated it. It was the worst feeling in the world for me. So yeah, the last couple of seasons was very, very difficult mentally for me as well, not be able to come back on that level that I wanted. Maybe I had maximum 2 years in me. I was 35 at the time. But also going back a few years when I had a couple of offers to leave the club. It's another sort of thing that people might don't know, but serious offers from Newcastle when I was sort of 32. I am incredibly proud and happy that I stayed and become a one club player. When I look back today, I'm very, very proud of being a Saint through and through. And that's why when I come back like last week, it's like coming home, and it's for me to you spend 14 years in a country when you've been looked after, like I said, like a family club, and the fans has been unbelievable to me, and that was also one of the most sort of emotional games and moments in my life, was to come back one last time and play that testimonial game against Celtic, because that was like you said, I hit that bad ankle injury, and I knew my career was over. But to come back one last time to thank the club, the city, and the supporters for giving me all that support for so many years was I've never been so nervous for a game ever. But that was a very, very emotional, special night to be able to say thank you to the club, to the supporters who was there for me for so many years.
There was a few people that said, can you ask Claus about his most memorable match at St Mary's? I guess probably the testimonial with Gordon Strachan bringing a team back, and so many of your former colleagues and friends on the pitch.
Yeah, it was the testimonial game, even though it was no competitive, even though Gordon Strachan with Celtic wanted it to be a sort of a friendly that they could get something out of. We put the best side out, obviously, to begin with, and try to make a good game of it. And with my pain and sort of my ankle, I had to settle for the last sort of 12, 15 minutes. I think I was able to play. Drugged myself down on painkillers, and but to be able to come out there for one last time and then reunite with Michael, with Matt, with all the main sort of we had a cluster of players around those years with Matt Letizia, Jason Dodd, Francis Benali, me, who had testimonials after each other. And that's something I don't think ever going to happen again, to see that sort of loyalty to one club. So that was a very, very special emotional night at St Mary's. But I also have fantastic memories from the Dell, and some unbelievable great escapes, and the game against Man U, 6-3 win, and the fairy tale of Matt's last goal, and the story behind it. I don't know if you heard it, but I promised him a case of Malibu and a case of Coke if he won the game for us, and And Monday morning I was there delivering that. So because I had a top 10 finish bonus in my contract, so but that couldn't have been written any better. It was like a fairy tale that he came on and finished that game and won it for us.
But didn't Chris Marsden nearly take the ball off of his toe? There was somebody else, wasn't there, queuing up
Yeah,
to hit it if
yeah,
he
you're
hadn't have
right.
done it. So it could have been slightly different.
It could have been, but I'm very lucky that Matt was the one who finished that and not Chris Marsden.
Phil got in touch to say, how did you cope with the difficulties you experienced after retiring from football? I think this is quite well documented, and I know you've spoken about it at length. But to go from all those highs to struggle with the injuries and then to not be playing, it must be such a drop, and it's got to be really difficult for you to get your head around.
Yeah, it's something that obviously I've written a book about. I've sort of I still travel the country and speak about my career, my ups and downs, and obviously my addiction. And I think at the time, like I said, I was so involved, so incredibly. What should I say? Involved with the performance of the club, being club captain at the time, and when you lose the dressing room and you lose the sort of waking up every morning to drive into your mates to train with every day, and you lose your life. You lose everything I had since I was 14 years old, and even though I thought I was well prepared for retirement, I was 35 at the time, and I had plans, but I think I said something very stupid to myself at the time, and that was that I should just enjoy life now for a year, travel and enjoy life, because I found it very lonely because all my teammates was obviously involved in football, other friends was working, and I found myself on my own. But losing that sense of purpose, that sense of belonging to that dressing room, what I knew. That was a grieving process and a loss that I dealt really, really bad with. And I went into deep depression, slowly but surely. Ironically, I had everything. I had a great family, a wonderful wife, two great kids. I had a wonderful house, 3 cars, a speedboat in Miami. I had a sailboat just down here. I had everything, millions in the bank. I had everything, but I was incredibly depressed, and I couldn't shake it. I couldn't. I found it. I've described it as going into sort of a black hole, because I lost what I lost the meaning of what I loved the most in my life, and that was performing together with my team, my mates, and the years that came after my retirement, I wouldn't sort of put on my worst ever enemy, because that was so incredibly painful and difficult. And to sit here today, obviously, I'm very, very thankful, grateful, appreciative of everything I've achieved as a footballer, but I think that the toughest match I've ever had to play was to fight the addiction, to fight for my life, because pretty quickly, inside a year after I retire, I woke up every morning drinking half a bottle of vodka just to function, and that hit me inside a year because I lost what I loved the most, and that depression that I couldn't shake, and I didn't know where I would get help, because all of a sudden I was just lost on my own, and that's why I'm sort of trying to be a role model of explaining this and helping sort of the Norwegian FA and clubs that I've been involved with. And this is also the reason I wrote the book about when you've been in that sort of professional life, being such a strong figure, an egocentric person everyone looks up to. For me, it took quite a few years to break that down because I needed myself to get vulnerable and actually accept that I was in a bad way, and that took some time, and it became pretty quickly a fight of life and death, because the alcohol and the prescription drugs, and after a while, a lot of cocaine, a lot of everything that, it should have killed me. I had a heart attack, and I've tried to kill myself twice after failing, because I after I become sober for the first time after 3 years, thanks to obviously Tony Adams and his good friend Peter Kay, rest in peace. He died a few years back. I managed to get treatment, but I knew very, very little of how to live my life without any drugs, any alcohol. So it's been a roller coaster, and then to fail after you promise you're never going to drink, or again, to a whole country, that sort of was impossible to deal with. And so I'm very, very humble today that I've managed to come through and learn enough about addiction, enough about my triggers, my sort of approach to life, because I was chasing something new and better all my life, and that's just impossible. So to find a different sort of perspective of what's important in life, even though it took me many years, it's actually the small things. It's actually the day-to-day small things that really matters. And but like I said, I'm lucky to be alive. I'm but it's probably meant to be. I'm incredibly grateful that I can share my story and help others, and like I said, travel the country and speak about this to young people, to youth clubs, to players that really want to be good. I think they deserve to hear that it's not only a sort of what you see in the papers and why it's a lot of money, it's a lot of fast cars and holidays and whatever. There's something behind it that's it's not that nice that people think, and obviously use of opiates and things like that. I've been through 16 operations. 15 of them has been football related operations, and that sort of also gave me the taste of morphine, of sort of strong painkillers, but it was nothing that I sort of thought about at the time. But it hit me bad later, and but like I said, the sort of loss of what I loved the most was gone, and I think that was the one of the biggest reasons that I sort of hit problems.
Has the support network for players changed now? Is the game in a better place? I was going to say, what advice would you have for players that are approaching the end of their career? Because there must be others who have gone through the same as you and haven't perhaps been as open and as honest and not shared their stories like you have. So is there a better network now? Is the game in a better place because of players like you that have shared your stories and written the book and the work that you've done with addiction and mental health?
Yes. The clubs are better. The FAs are better. They got more focus on mental health. I've been self-working in a mental health and a psychiatry hospital for 6 years, and it's in football and pro football, pro anything. It's got better when it comes to talking about mental health and addiction, but we got a long way to go. It's still a lot of stigma there. It's still a lot of taboo to talk about these things, to show your vulnerability, your sort of break down that sort of ego of admitting to yourself and your surroundings you got a problem. But I do think the clubs and has done a better job. But like I said, I would like to have seen more being done when it comes to preparing players for retirement. If you're lucky, you play maybe to you 35, 40, and you still got 30, 40, 50 years to live, and it's difficult because the adrenaline kick you get and the sort of lifestyle you live as a professional footballer, running out to 30 to 80,000 people every day, the adrenaline kick you're never gonna recreate. So to have, for a start, something to wake up to, something meaningful to go to, a network of friends, a network of be able to create meaning is something I think for all of us is incredibly important. But for us, as when you, for me, played professional football for 20 years and then all of a sudden everything's finished, and for me, I felt alone, I felt lonely, and drink and partying became more and more of my life. I think more guidance, more sort of knowledge into that sort of approach should be provided by clubs. But it's tough to talk about. Mental health and addiction is difficult to talk about, especially for us big strong men. That's why I used a long time to hold both my hands over my head and ask for help. So, but to have somewhere in a club where you can knock on the door and actually say I'm not feeling great. I'm having problems. Because we all gonna hit some problems during our lives. That will be incredibly helpful to have that openness in the club, even in a professional Premier League club.
I'd like to talk a bit more about the modern game and kind of bring it back to Southampton. Alistair says, as a defender, does Claus think that he would have enjoyed having VAR? He says, I'm sure there are plenty of incorrect decisions that went against his defence over the years. Would he have preferred it, or would you be happy to go old school? Are we back to that FA Cup final again and what VAR might have made of that?
Well, I think that would, if that was later in the game, he must have sent me off. But it's difficult. I think VAR it's come. Yeah, it's going to stay in football, and I think it's a tool that is good for certain situations. I think obviously when it comes to if the ball is in or out of the goal or crucial sort of incidents, VAR is good. The sort of sad thing about it, I feel today watching football or watching the game today is obviously the time of what they use, and also you can sort of only half celebrate if you're sort of waiting for a situation. It could be anything in the box or an offside or whatever. So that sort of immediate response of a goal, that's it's a little bit taken away. But I think VAR is there to stay. But it is difficult. I think it's difficult for the referees as well. But it's I do believe it's gonna hopefully improve and it will take some time to adapt to.
It's not a problem that we currently have, of course, at Southampton. What have you made of the season so far and the new manager coming in and in particular the new style of play? Do you still get to follow the club as much and see as many of the games as perhaps you used to?
Yeah, I follow as much as I can. Obviously, from Norway. Obviously now with my new business venture I'm going to be over a lot more. But what I've seen this season, obviously after Martin came in, it's actually the Birmingham game when I was there watching it live was probably on a whole the best game I've seen of them whole season. That especially that first half was incredibly good, and I think we're starting to see the team gelling now. The team trusting each other to play that style. Russell Martin want to play is you need a lot of trust in each other to play that way, and ability and obviously confidence to roll the ball around like you see City in their own 5-6 yard boxes. It takes some time, but I think it's the right way to play football. I think it's the most sort of the best way to educate footballers. The best teams play like this, but it will take time. But what I can see now in the last few games is promising signs of players gelling together and connect. There's connections there that is starting to gel, and I feel pretty confident now. They should have a squad of players that I'll be very, very disappointed if they're not top six, and hopefully pushing on to. I do think the top two at the Leicester and Ipswich is gonna hit a bad spell at some stage, and we should be up there with the squad of players we have, and it's looked a bit naive. It's looked dangerous. It's looked sort of vulnerable, and yes, it is. But that's the downside of achieving what he want us to play football.
Kate says, how well does Klaus think he would have coped with that current style, those short passes around the 6-yard box with the strikers waiting to pounce? Would that have been fun, or do you watch it and go, that's not my cup of tea, that's not for me?
I loved it. I loved it. That's. I think that was the main reason Graham Souness brought me to Southampton. That was exactly my ability on the ball to be able to take the ball a step forward to create, obviously, a situation where we can overload in midfield, and if you look at the game today, that's how it should be played. So, and the centre half today must have that ability. So for me at the time, I loved it and would have loved to play in today's football.
Mm. So you mentioned you were back in Southampton. There's the new business venture. You're now running Born Supporter. Just tell us a bit about this and how it all came about, because it's something that I wasn't expecting from you, but it's a great product, and I think you've really identified a gap in the market.
Yeah, we have, and I think it's. I was approached about 3 years ago by. Actually, I didn't know him at the time, but he was a well-known financial businessman in Norway. He was behind a few very successful startup companies. He approached me with this product called Born Supporter, who was a poster of one-to-one scale baby, a birth certificate of obviously your baby, form in a one-to-one scale. And the idea grew on me, and we had used a couple of years of developing the product, because it's a bit of art in the product. It's not a face on it. It's 8 different designs on it. So it's and then we started to approach some of the clubs, and the feedback we got was incredible. They loved the product. They loved the sort of idea of creating a birth poster that is where you obviously you wanna when you get a child, and I'm a lucky father of 2 girls. And I've even they're 20 and 24. I've made posters of them, and sort of the memories of how small they were when they became a Saints supporter. So it's not only for newborns; it's for everyone. But it's a very, very professional product. It's printed on fine art sort of paper. It's obviously brand guidelines, logos, crests, everything. It's an official club product. So it's a product that we spend a lot of time developing, but we are very proud of it and very happy with where we are now, and sort of approaching. We already got 5 clubs involved. Could have chosen to go to a few more, but we've been waiting for this Southampton launch for a long time, and we are a few months delayed in the process. So now it's hopefully everything will kick off, and people will recognize the product as a quality product, as obviously a official club product with which they will see around the supporter shop, and hopefully around a few homes on the walls of newborn families.
So it's in
So
the shop. The club have taken it in the shop, haven't they? I know they've opened an extra shop
yeah,
for Christmas as well, and it's available online.
yes, we have a website called bornsupporter.com, where you can. It's obviously that's where you make your poster one-to-one scale, and it's print on demand. At the moment, we have sent posters to Southampton where they're going to have them in the supporter store with a QR code where they can go straight to the website and create their poster. So and like I said, there's 8 different designs, and we got 4 different frames you can choose. So yeah, it's a venture that we've been working, especially the last year, very very hard on, and now to sign long-term deals with big clubs. It's great because there's nothing like it in the market, and I think the clubs recognise that as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, you very kindly said that we can give away a Saints Born supporter poster to somebody in the TSP community. So make sure you follow us. It's at Total Saints Pod for Facebook and for Twitter, and at Total Saints Podcast on Instagram. We're going to share those competition details soon. Klaus, before we let you go, just final thoughts, message for Saints fans that are watching or listening to this, your thoughts on the season and just in general.
Well, it was absolutely magic to see so many Saints fans again last weekend against Birmingham at home. In general, to come back to Southampton is like coming home to me. So it's always great to reconnect to the fans. And like I said early on, what would we be without the fans? And Southampton fans is incredibly loyal to the club, and I will love them for the rest of my lives, and what they've given me of support over so many years, I will never ever forget. So I love them dearly.
It's been great catching up. Claus Lundekvam, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
So, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, TSP is fully supported by our Patreon community. And if you're interested in joining us on Patreon with a monthly contribution, just visit patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. Don't forget, you can follow the Total Saints Podcast on Facebook and Twitter. It's at Total Saints Pod. We're also on Instagram and Threads, where it's at Total Saints Podcast. We live stream the podcast every Sunday evening at 7:15 UK time to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. So if you're finding us for the first time, we hope to see you there on Sunday night. We also love to hear from you throughout the week. So drop us a DM on any of the socials, or you can email us via the website if you have something to share. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.